Hi everyone, this is EDIT 5100 Chapter 7, Assistive Technology to Create Visual Supports and Support Positive Behaviors. Problems students with autism and other disabilities have with behavior. Learning the rules of behavior and social interaction are especially challenging to children with autism. And I'm sure most of you who have worked with students with autism or know someone with autism can relate to that. When stressed, disruptive behavior such as loud vocalizations, hand flapping, face slapping, and hand biting can occur. It interrupts the learning experience for the student as well as others, and then yourself as well as a teacher. Transitions from one activity to another, from one environment to another, or from one teacher to another can lead to tantrums. And we talked a little bit about familiarity when it comes to a specific schedule, and so this is what they're talking about in this specific bullet. Carefully plan their transitions and make use of transitioning supports. And then, of course, picture schedule decreases reliance on adult prompting. So usually there are some students in my class that will say, oh yeah, we definitely do have visuals that are on the walls so that students can look at it if they ever forget or if they're anxious and they want to know what's going to happen next. They can look at the board and there might be some sort of picture schedule so they understand what's going to happen next. So what are visual supports? So pictorial or video representations of activities, tasks, or behaviors that serve as non-spoken reminders of what a student should do. So simple paper-based products or technology-based can be used for this specific thing. So it depends on the student. Maybe if they're younger, they don't necessarily use the technology and they'll have a piece of paper or a poster or something like that so that they can just look at it anytime they want to know what's going to happen next and stuff like that. Research, children with autism learn through visual means. So there are pre-made visual supports such as line drawings or genetic pictures, or they have concrete symbols, which are actually photographs of things that are going on. In this image right here, you see on the slide, you see 5 steps for when your friend is bugging you. Number 1, it says take a deep breath. And there's also a little cartoon character, or basically a line drawing of a character breathing. Number 2, ask the kid to please stop. And then of course there's a little red hand that says stop. And then 3, tell the kid how you feel. And then they give you a little script, which is, that makes me feel. And then the visuals, there are like a happy face, a sad face, a crying face, and stuff like that, so that it allows the student to be able to choose from those things. 4 is to walk away, and 5 is to ask the teacher for help. And then, of course, you can see the hands reaching for help from an older person. So this is a visual support that reminds students what to do if they forget when it comes to the different processes, so they don't become frustrated, throw a tantrum like we talked about before, or do loud vocalizations and stuff like that that might be interruptive of a classroom. Picture schedules. So these are pictorial representations of events or tasks that cue a student to complete them, similar to a to-do list. Help students see the daily structure at a glance and reduce anxiety. View upcoming activities like we talked about before, have a better understanding of a sequence of activities that will occur, and of course, increase overall predictability. So if you do want any type of visual cue cards for doing anything, you can actually go online and just click on, type in, visual cues for, and then there's a ton of stuff that teachers have already made. You don't need to recreate the wheel or anything like that. There are people who've already done this already, so you just take advantage of it because they're sharing it online for you. And you can also see in the picture on the slide, it says Trevor gets dressed. So you can see that there's like little Velcro pieces that are on the left next to the number. So every morning it starts on the left, and number 1 it says underwear. Then you take the sticker or the Velcro of the picture of the underwear over to the right so that you know that you have done that. And then the next one is pants. And then of course you move that over, and then the next one is shirt, and then socks, and then shoes. And once all the pictures are on to the right, you know that that student has now done everything they need to do. They know exactly what they needed to do. They don't need a prompting by an adult or anything like that because there's a visual cue for them already, right? And so that can be very, very helpful. I'll give you another example for an adult with autism. If there's a person, let's say, working at, let's say, Home Depot, right? And there's a job coach that works with them. The job coach is basically there at the beginning to learn exactly what the responsibilities of that specific person is supposed to do. Then they might write down a list, and then they give that list to that student or that person, and they might keep it in their pocket or on their phone or something like that. So once they do this, then they just check to see what they have to do next if they forget, and then what they do next after that, and what do they do next after that. That way, if they forget in the middle of the day, they don't need to rely on another person. They can just look at that phone or that piece of paper, and then it'll remind them what they need to do next. And once all that stuff is done, then they might go and say, I am done for the day and stuff like that. If that person gets let's say, a notice for a meeting can be like a staff meeting, can be very scary because they're like, what's going to happen? So what we advise or we recommend is that the person who's doing the meeting provide that person with autism a list of all the things that are going to be talked about at that meeting. So that way that person can look at it and go, okay, the boss is talking about this, now the boss is going to talk about this, now the boss is going to talk about that. So there's a sense of order for that person, and then they don't feel scared because, there's sometimes anxiety when you go to a meeting. You're like, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to do? Am I in trouble? All that stuff can also run through a person with autism's mind. And so having this will ease their sense of panic or anxiety so that they don't, interrupt their day or anyone else's day. And the same thing will happen with that person. Let's say if they get a promotion, a job coach will come back in, learn what the steps are, and then provide a new list of things that that person is supposed to do, and then, repeat and go from there. Activity sequences, step-by-step pictorial representations of a particular task. For example, brushing one's teeth or cooking popcorn in the microwave or taking out the trash. So you can have those sequences that we were talking about before. Shift from adult verbal prompts to independent completion of self-care and vocational tasks. There's programs such as Boardmaker or Symbolsticks that you can use, but you can also use PowerPoint or whatever just to create the visuals and then print them out, or make it into a PDF or something like that for them to be able to look at. Print and put on the student's desk or fold it up and put it in the student's pocket, wherever they want, so that they can have that little reminder each day. So if they do have an anxiety issue, they can just look at it and then their anxiety hopefully will reduce. We're basically de-escalating any potential tantrums or disruptive behaviors. There's also video modeling, effective in teaching functional skills, appropriate behavior, and then also social skills. So a really fun one here is how to brush your teeth. If you can do a video with puppets and stuff like that. So I recommend that you stop the lecture right now, watch that video, because you'll see how effective it is, because it's fun and it's doing it in real time, so the student can watch it on, let's say, an iPad, and then they'll do it at the same time with the video. There's also iPrompts and AutisMate, who are programs that help you create something very similar, but you can also just do it on, a video camera. All you have to pay attention to is that if you are creating individualized videos, make sure the student demonstrates the same task in various environments to promote generalization. Because sometimes students will say, well, I only do that in my own bathroom. Instead, they can also do it at their friend's house if they're going to do sleepovers and stuff like that. And obviously, you can see here during the times of COVID-19, coronavirus, we've seen a lot of visual modeling of how to wash your hands. It's on TikTok, it's also on Facebook, but there's also visuals that you see when you go to, let's say, a restaurant before restaurants are closed. Number one, turn on the water and wet your hands. 2, put soap on there. 3, wash for 20 seconds or sing happy birthday 2 times. 4 is to rinse, 5 is to dry, and then 6 is to turn off the water with a paper towel. So even people without disabilities often need to be reminded if they didn't know, right? So that's something that is very effective in any circumstances, especially when you want to make sure that it's actually done properly. Social stories are short stories that are written to help a student who has autism learn the social information he or she may be lacking. So it might help them with reading about body language, looking at a situation from another person's perspective, responding in socially acceptable ways, and then cope with changes in classroom routines when there's like, let's say, a substitute teacher, a field trip, or fire drill where there is some sense of unexpectedness. You might want to let that student know beforehand when you're doing the practice so that they're familiar with like, oh, this is a special situation, and so we'll go back to that regularly scheduled thing after this. So it's okay sometimes, maybe the teacher is sick, that there's another teacher there, not to panic and go, who are you, and all that other stuff, and have like, let's say some sort of escalation of panic or anxiety. Social stories should be written in the first person, so the perspective of that child, and then focus on positive behaviors, don't focus on the negative ones, and conveyed in a patient and reassuring manner. So these are things that you will have to do for this assignment, which is to create a social story for a specific activity. And you need to remember all these things, and we'll see a little bit more about advice on how to do this as well. Okay, so one of the things that you want to do is write descriptive sentences, the most important aspect of the topic. So for example, we'll say, in morning meeting, we all sit in a circle. Okay, there's a visualization, it's easy to read, it's descriptive. Then the perspective sentence would be describing other people's feelings, opinions, or motivations. So for the example for this would be, everyone likes it when it is their turn to talk. So you can see it's a perspective of other people, so they understand that all people like to talk, let's say. And then there's also directive sentences, which is identifying an appropriate response or choice of responses. So here is a specific example. When my classmates take their turns, I sit in my chair and listen. So they understand that they're supposed to do this. It's not always about them. And then then affirmative sentences is expressing a common value or rule without a culture. So the example would be, when I sit and listen, I'm being polite, and I show that I care about my classmates. So again, it's a positive tone to the sentence and statement. So hopefully that will become ingrained in their socialization and behaviors so that they can go carry this all the way through school. And then also maybe at the workplace. There is a really great video about a child called Blossoming as a Child Prolo Quote Demo. And it's an assistive wear social stories where it basically explains a process of one child who has autism and their communication skills. Because what people think is that when you have, let's say, a device, let's say an augmentative communication device, it actually prevents the student from ever talking. Whereas the studies are actually saying that with this device, it's more likely that students do verbalize. And the reason why is because they probably hear the responses over and over again on the machine. They're being encouraged to say it. They hear it all the time. And so then suddenly they decide to. When you try to make a child to do something, they might not want to because they're shy or they're scared or afraid. But if the machine is vocalizing all the time what they're also trying to vocalize, then there's a more of an opportunity for them to then also maybe sound those words out as well. And one thing that I definitely want to say is that not all students are going to be able to vocalize, okay? These examples that I'm showing to you are kind of ideal situations, and the sad truth is not all students are going to be able to handle this, and that's okay as well, okay? Because I know that when I was showing these videos, some of my students were very upset. They're like, well, my student can't do that. I'm like, yes, I understand that, but we're showing you the assistive devices that could potentially help or that are out there so that you understand that for some people, this is actually really beneficial. And for some students, they're never going to verbalize ever in their entire lives. And that's okay too, okay?